know you covered a few areas there. I mean, if you get people away from their day job and you say, right, I need you to do this, we've got a deadline to do this, what is the quality of that testing going to look like, first of all? And if you're asking people to change their job responsibilities to come and do this testing, and it's going to affect structure, it's going to affect people's day jobs,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
But are there any
Absolutely.
other sort of patterns that you see when people get into this firefighting mode?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's about making sure you're doing it comprehensively. And to your point, a lot of times I've even talked to customers where they're gearing up for go live, and the folks who are going to test it quarterly or during these releases aren't even aware that's a part of their job description now. And it's something that they're having to now make sure those employees are on board with that. You have to have very clean test scripts. So if you're doing it manually, you have to have a repository of guides and scripts to make sure they know what steps to follow. And you have to maintain those scripts. So as things change, you have to keep up with them. So there's a lot of manual work there. And usually, again, it's a limited set of test cases. If a customer's thought through it correctly, they would do it based on priority. What are the things that absolutely can't fail? But then you have varying levels of quality based on the individual. When it's humans testing, there's going to be mistakes. There's going to be maybe some people who do their due diligence and are very detailed in tracking and finding issues. Some may be a little less detailed and just try to get through that to get back to their day job. So you're going to have varying levels of quality. And ultimately what it can lead to is attrition. And that's something no one really likes to talk about. But a lot of times whether it's in an implementation or putting this type of burden on employees, you can cause employees to say, this is what I really signed up for. You're putting too much on me, and you can lose those employees. And then what happens is you have to then hire someone, onboard them, ramp them up. And so there is a revenue impact to getting that person up to speed, making sure they're doing it with quality, and that turnover can really impact that process.
So, I mean, there's so many risks when you try and rush this, or it's seen as sort of a last minute fix, or right, I forgot about this. We need to change it. There's so many risks and errors, as you mentioned, that can happen.
Yeah, 100%.
Changes when organizations stop treating the release readiness as a one-off activity, and stop viewing it as a continuous operating capability instead.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where this is the education piece. And I've seen this vary from customer to customer. Some are doing it and have that rigor and that process in place. They have everyone on board, and it's almost a project management where you have to make sure, okay, this is hitting, everyone's got their assignments, make sure you're communicating it back. And so again, when it's manually, you're having to manage all these people and you're having to make sure it gets done. A lot of customers, I've actually met customers who just skip it completely. And that's kind of scary. And you
Yeah.
come back to the risk factor. I mean, when you think of automation and AI and how we can incorporate software to enable our team, a lot of the conversation is, okay, we want to create efficiency. We want to reduce the cost. We want to make it faster and more streamlined. But the risk is the biggest one. So I'm glad you hit on that. It's risk of the quality, but the ultimate downstream risk is what happens if a critical process fails and we have to react. And let's say it hits production and it's something that absolutely cannot stop for an hour or a day or a week. Can we afford to let that happen? So there's the risk of us operating and with resilience and making sure we're ahead of that. And there's also risk to the user experience. Again, we talked about these systems, the user experience is critical. There's the stress it's going to put on those end users, those personas who expect the system to be operating the way it should. And they're the ones who are then raising the red flag and saying, we got a critical problem. I can't complete my process. Then the administrators, the IT department, HRIS, whoever is supporting that is having a fire drill to rush to get that fixed. So it creates stress, anxiety. It affects the adoption of the system, and ultimately the risk comes back to the business because if certain processes fail, it could actually have legal implications.
Yeah.
And we don't really like to think about that, but I've seen customers who are just bypassing testing completely with a hoping nothing breaks. And it's not if it will break, it's when it will break. So you've got to have that process.